It's meteorologist Mike Seidel. He is joining us right now. He is live in Massachusetts. Mike, where to begin, right? I mean, the problems have been mounting throughout the day.
Yes, and the wind, fortunately, though, has backed off. We're getting the back end of the rainfalls we've been showing you on the radar. The ferries are running. We've got ferries coming across Boston Harbor. Some of those were shut down, a couple out there in the distance. So that is a sign that things are getting back closer to where it should be here in December, except for the temperature. We're still in the upper 50s, had a record high today. Last check, 62. And unless we get down into the low 40s by midnight, which we won't, we're going to have a record low, a record high minimum temperature. So very warm last night, very warm today as the ferries churn through the Boston Harbor. Over at Boston International, we still have that ground delay program. Average arrival delays now up around 2 hours, 2.5 hours. They've had about 320 cancellations, not a huge number of cancellations. Most of those are regional jets, but as the winds die off and the visibility picks up, things will improve, and certainly a much better day tomorrow. Across the state of Massachusetts, about 260,000 customers without power. That's about 10%. 1 in 10 of every customer has lost power from this storm. And it's, not a tropical storm. Ended up with some significant coastal flooding in Rhode Island. And meanwhile, as the rain ends, we added up here near the coast. We weren't under a flood watch. We picked up just about 2 inches rain at Boston's Logan Airport. Inland now, certainly west of 95, the flood watches go for another few hours till 7. Those areas have picked up 2 to 3 inches of rain or more. And we've talked about quite a bit all day how much rain we've seen down the East Coast and into the interior Northeast, into the Poconos and upstate New York. So, Colleen, almost forgot. Colleen, I've been watching you all afternoon. Colleen, things much improved now. Tomorrow, the big change will be back to normal temperature-wise, mid-40s. The sun will be out, but no worse for the wear right here in Boston. It was a lot worse as far as flooding goes from rainwater, freshwater flooding away from this particular metro area.
Yeah, wow. Thank you so much, Mike. So much going on. A rough day here across the Northeast, and Boston still seeing some of it.
Take you right to the Northeast with meteorologist Mike Seidel. He's in Boston, Massachusetts for us.
And Mike, we really want to ask you, you've been talking about some of the conditions there. You seeing some improvements in the last few hours?
Oh, by far, the rain has lightened up considerably. Just a mist right now. The wind has really backed off. Just across the way, I can hear planes taking off at Logan International. Still the ground delay program there, but the winds over there now running at about 15 to 20 miles sustained. We're not getting those extreme gusts. Earlier, we had a gust to 68 miles an hour. That's the strongest gust I've seen in eastern Massachusetts. Now, as far as the rainfall goes, it wasn't nearly as wet here as it was back to the west. And all the flash flood warnings we saw earlier through upstate New York, eastern Pennsylvania, the Poconos, down towards the eastern shore of Maryland, some areas getting 5 to 6 inches of rain. At Logan Airport, we're now just over 2 inches of rain today. And last time I checked, the official high was 63. 63 degrees on December 18th, a week before Christmas. And as you may have suspected, that is a record high for the date. The lowest this morning was 52. And unless we get down to about 42, I believe, by midnight, we're going to have a record max, a record high temperature, and a record high low temperature. You don't often see that very often anywhere. And here in December, boy, once the rain backed off around 1:30 and the sun peeked through, people came out around the harbor, were just enjoying the weather, and then the rain did come back. But the rain is pretty much over with, just the mist. The airport is, again, with the ground delay program through this evening, so deal with delays over there. And power outages beginning to come down a little bit, now down to around 250,000. That's about 9% of the customer base here in the state of Massachusetts. Watching another boat go out of the harbor. Yep, the boats are back on the water. The ferries are moving, and things are looking up here in Boston after a very windy, warm, and stormy day. But conditions continue to be pretty awful up the coast in down East Maine. We'll go back there next.
Well, the rain is letting up a bit after some serious downpours across the Northeast earlier today. That includes in Boston, Massachusetts, where we find meteorologist Mike Seidel. Improving weather today, Mike, but at least this evening. But my goodness, Boston has easily been the worst airport in America today.
By far. They had a ground stop, I think, that went on for about 6 hours. How often do you see that? Even during snowstorms, you don't see that. And they've had the ground delay program since about 9 this morning. So even with that, they've only had about 300 cancellations, but long delays and flights get backed up. And I can tell you from a personal standpoint, flights are full. Trying to get back tomorrow to Atlanta, well, everything's full because of the holiday travel. So this time of the year, if your flight gets canceled, it's hard to find a seat the very next day. Meanwhile, back here at Logan, 1.64 inches of rain. That's the daily record for today. There's storm total just over 2 inches, and the record high temperature checks in at 63 degrees. Right now, it is 61 degrees, 61 at Logan, just over there, and there goes one of the ferry boats. So a lot of these were not running this morning, and the harbor has really calmed down. The tide is going out, still some splash over here. The tide now going out. We had high tide about an hour to an hour and a half ago. Power outages have been a big concern. We were up around 275,000 statewide, now down about 250,000. Now that the winds are dying down, they'll be able to get up and get the power back on. And the wind advisory for the South Coast, South Shore, and the Cape is set to expire at 7 p.m. Tonight. So, Mike, didn't get the rainfall that we saw in many other areas and the flash flooding impact, but we certainly had the winds. In fact, you can correct me. I did see some story about a wind gust over hurricane force, but the highest wind I've seen in eastern Mass was the 68 late morning at Boston's Logan Airport. And that's one of the reasons we lost a lot of power.
Yeah, so many without power right now, Mike. Your point is well made. And, you know, if it's 60 or if it's 70, there's not a huge difference in that, right? But still, man, what a rough day for us today. Mike, thank you very much. We'll have more coverage with Mike coming up on Storm Center as well, so you want to stick around for that.
And so let's actually, now we do have Mike back, I believe, dialed in here. Let's go back and check in with Mike. Hello, Mike.
It works better if you can hear me. Well, sometimes at home, it's better not that I say anything. But anyway, back here at just outside Logan Airport, planes are taking off. We still have the ground delay program, Chris. We've had over 225 cancellations, most by far of any airport in the U.S. So the biggest impact was here, and the main reason was the wind. I mean, it was just howling all morning into this afternoon. Our peak gust was nearly 70 miles an hour, 68 miles an hour around 11 a.m. So we had a ground stop up for about 5 or 6 hours. That is a long time to have planes held at the departure site. Now, this was not for the whole country, mostly a regional impact in the Northeast and parts of eastern Canada. The power is slowly coming back on, but we still have about 240,000 customers without power. That's down about 35,000 customers. So if you do the mathematics, that's about 9% of the customer base here in Massachusetts. The other story today, besides the wind, is how warm it is. Officially, a record high of 63 degrees here on December 18th in Boston. And right now, I don't need this coat. I had it on earlier, it was raining. It's 60 degrees. 60 degrees at 5 p.m. Things are going to be changing the next couple of days. We're going to get back closer to average. We have that southwest wind, which will become a west and northwest wind, and that's going to bring in the colder air and the drier air. And as I mentioned, the pressure is now rising rapidly, Chris. It got down to 979 millibars, and if your home barometer is in inches, that is just below 29 inches of mercury, and that is a very low pressure. In fact, we had a lot of stations in the southeast in Florida that had their lowest December pressure on record from this storm, and that was before it dropped below 990 last night and this morning.
All right, meteorologist Mike Seidel, thank you so much.
Welcome back to Boston Harbor. I'm meteorologist Mike Seidel. It is much different now than it was just really a few hours ago, and certainly this morning we had wind gusts at Boston Logan Airport to 68 miles an hour. They by far are the hardest hit airport. They picked up about a fourth of all the canceled flights today, up around 225 flights. Still a ground delay program there through this evening because of the backlog of flights, and they had a ground stop earlier for about 5 or 6 consecutive hours. There's the skyline. The visibility is up. We're seeing some blue sky or some clearing skies now. Winds have gone southwest, so the storm has gone on by. The pressure dropped down to 979 millibars. I want to take you back to about lunchtime today. The squall came through and did kick up the winds. But the highest wind gust actually was about an hour earlier when it was hardly raining. Some of that stronger wind mixed down to the surface. And look at this heavy rain here at Long Wharf. Just sheets of rainfall. At that time, the wind was gusting about 45 to 50 miles an hour. The other big story today, the temperatures. Temperature right now 60 degrees, a record high of 63. Well, say goodbye to that for a while. Tomorrow's high back in the more typical mid-40s. And power outages slowly coming down now, about 240,000 customers. That is about 9%, Chris, of the power base in Massachusetts. And you think about it, it could be a little bit worse if it was, 20 or 25 degrees. Fortunately, I'm out here way overdressed now because I don't need the raincoat and the layers from earlier today.
Yeah, pretty remarkable there, Mike. 60 degrees right now. Certainly appreciate it. Looks like a pleasant evening, but of course the mild temperature is not going to last.
Good evening. I'm meteorologist Mike Seidel. We are back here at Boston Harbor, a completely different scene than it was earlier today, and even till mid-afternoon. Wind gusting up to 68 miles an hour, lashing rainfall, but the temperature is delightful. The week before Christmas, 60 degrees at 5 p.m. Our record high today, 63, Chris. What a wonderfully warm day. In fact, when we got a break from the rain this afternoon, Chris, a lot of people just came out of the woodwork to get outside and enjoy the mild air because they know in Boston in December it doesn't last very long. But a complete different setup now after all the wind and the rain. The only other issue we're dealing with now is the power outages, which have dropped now down to about 240,000 customers. Earlier up at 275,000. So we're going in the right direction. But again, overly dressed at this point this evening in Boston.
I think you could pull off some shorts there, Mike, with 60 degrees in Boston at the moment. Beautiful scene, too.
Yeah.
All right, we certainly appreciate
nice
it,
out
Mike.
here. We can see the stars. We can see the moon. And we can see the jets taking off from Logan. So, I mean, talk about night and day. This is like day and night. The daytime was just rotten awful, and the nighttime is just quaint, quiet, and mild. I mean, I bet there's a lot of folks on the streets tonight heading out to restaurants. Just one of those nights you got to take in because you know it's not going to last, and it's not. Tomorrow's high's back in the more typical 40s.
Yeah, it's going to get cold and get cold in a hurry. Meteorologist Mike Seidel, thanks so much.